Welcome back to Lumpia Bytes. I'm your host Muchi, and joining me today is none other than my fearless co-host G. Today's episode is gonna be a good one, so grab your coffee, tea, sit back, relax, and be ready to learn as we spill the tea on the AI economy. We are gonna deep dive on a question that everyone is asking. What is my next best career move in the age of AI? Is master's degree still worth it? Will it still give me the competitive edge that I want a master's degree to give me? And how can you start competing globally without leaving the comfort of home? If you're thinking about your next best career move, or you're thinking of moving to a different country, or wondering how to stay relevant in the AI world, well, you're in the right place.
So, our guest today is someone who started his tech career in the Philippines, made the move to Australia, got his master's degree in data science, and is now the head of solutions engineering for the ANZ region, Australia and New Zealand region, at one of the leading graph technology companies in the world. So, he has a track record across global tech companies like Microsoft, McKinsey, EY, Teradata, and Neo4j, where he bridges the gap between engineering, business value, and strategy. And we're really grateful to have him here today. Emil Lawrence Pastor, welcome to Lumpia Bytes. Hi, Emil.
Hello. Hi, kamusta? How are you?
Good. Well, first of all, thanks, Emil, for being game on sharing your insights. We're really excited in this one. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I guess I just wanted to throw it out to the audience. Mooch. I met Emil during my time in Teradata in the Philippines. He's known as one of the brightest in the group. He would always ace all those, certification exams, right? We have in tech, there's a lot of certification exams. He's always ahead of everyone in our group. And, he's known to be really the brightest. And one thing that stood out is he's still eager to learn. He's always eager to learn, not just with any, technology, but also with your workmates. He's always eager to collaborate. And so I'm really excited to have you, Emil.
Yeah, great to be here. It's an opportunity for us to showcase like a Filipino journey in tech.
Yep. That's actually one of the main goal of the podcast is to highlight, tech professionals, especially Filipinos in the tech community. All right, I think we can dive into it. Maybe we can start by walking us through your career journey. How did you end up where you are today?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. You know, when if I reflect back on my career, it was never perfectly planned. I didn't even realize nor plan to be in Australia, right, 15, 16 years back. I think primarily it was shaped more of my curiosity, some luck, but also opportunities that came along the way. Each of those organizations that I've joined became sort of like a milestone that I just built on top of the previous one and gradually shaped the path on where I am today. So I think just to give you a background, I started quite early. In Philippines, we don't have year 11 and year 12. So my first job when I was like 20 years old was a solutions engineer, actually at a telco company in the Philippines. Back then, I don't know anything about a corporate life, but it gave me a great view of how is it to work with big clients with big guns. But during my period of being a solutions engineer in telco, I felt I was too junior for the role because I was dealing with some of the executives. Like to give you a background, the role is being able to architect, say, connectivity between Philippines and Australia. If an Australian company wants to build an outsourcing shared services business unit in Manila. So I felt I was too junior, so I stepped back and promised myself that one day I would become a solutions engineer again because I realized I was too junior. I then joined another IT company where I was asked to analyze server logs and system performance and whatnot. All right, that was my first exposure on data analysis and SQL, and I do realize that I actually quite enjoyed it a lot because I've always enjoyed math and those analytical thinking type of problem, and I find that work very engaging. So from that moment, I realized that working with data is something that I wanted to pursue. Back then, it was also a very niche area. Then soon after, I was very lucky to meet a university friend who referred me to Teradata when they were still setting up the Manila office, like 15 years back. And that opportunity gave me the foundation that I need in data and analytics. And I never looked back after that. And then later I moved to consulting, which helped me taught communication, problem solving, and how to break down complex problem into outcomes. And then at some point, I always wanted to study, postgraduate degree, but I want to study it outside the Philippines. That's always a dream, and I I had an opportunity to study in Australia for a master's because I just want to experience a different education system and expand my career. So I waited till I become like a resident because the fees are significantly lower if you're a resident versus you're an international student. So yeah, I took that opportunity and looking back right to where I am today, I think I was it's really a mix of curiosity, a bit of luck, and hustling.
I didn't know this one that you started the solution engineer right prior to Teradata, and now you ended up like the solution engineer, like heading the solutions engineering team.
I promised myself I want to go back. I don't know when I will go back. I just take it opportunity by opportunity. And along the way, I think something that I realized, building a career, there's no, like, you always have a picture of in your mind of who you want it to be, but it doesn't always go that way. So I take it one step at a time. Back then, I don't even know what solutions engineering means when I started. I think to give you a background, I was very raw. I don't even know how to like, having lunches with executives and whatnot for a 20-year-old is quite intimidating. I don't even know how to use chopsticks like in front of them. So I have to learn all of those, like, those little things. And I have to recognize early on that, my skill is not yet there. I don't know what skills will help me become a better solutions engineer until I started venturing into other parts of, different careers, right? Systems engineering in an IT company or a professional services consultant in Teradata. And then from there, I realized that, a different mix of skills that requires me and gives me confidence to go back.
Emil, we have a lot of people who are not technical who listen to this podcast. For the titos and titas listening who are helping their kids navigate this new hyper overwhelming economy that their kids are suddenly entering into, can you help us imagine what does a solution engineer do day to day and what things do they need in order to build towards that type of career path?
The way I explain what solutions engineering, to the client and even to my team is, I think three things. One, when we talked about solutions engineering, you're actually balancing three perspectives. One is customer success, right? Which is, I think, the most important amongst all of the three. Because when you become a solutions engineer, you need to solve a specific business problem. And you need to make sure that this business problem will not only be solved during a pilot or a proof of concept, right? Or during a prototype. It should also be, you should also be able to help the customer realize the value of what you're solving for in production or in operations. And the second one is, if you're a solutions engineer in, where I work right now at Neo4j or in some other companies, your goal is to solve that problem using the technology. If I am pitching graph, then it should be a problem wherein graph really stands out, right? Like fraud use case or, customer journey type of use case, or financial crime and the likes. So this is where, the technical chops are coming in, right? Given a problem, how will you be able to solve it using, in this context, graph? Or if you work for a cloud company, how do you solve it with one of the hyperscalers that you work for? And the third thing is, which is, I find it tricky, but I think it's a great place to learn, is also the commercial impact. You're going to the client for the company to make business. Commercial impact is, given a customer problem, you're actually selling this particular product. How will you make sure that you will also help your company meet their revenue objectives, right? You are not directly doing, any transaction to the customer, but you're influencing them to make a transaction in such a way that that transaction will help solve the problem using the technology.
So would you say that solutions engineering is part problem solving, part technical, and part business? So it's like the intersection of those three things, right?
Yeah. So if I sum it up, you're facing a customer, you solve a specific problem for them, you use the technology, and then you work on the commercials as well.
Nice, nice, nice. So is this part of the sales process? Is this a sales role?
Yes. So solutions engineering sits within the sales organization. We do another term for like solutions engineering is pre-sales engineering, solutions architecture. So our primary job, one of our primary job is pre-sales or solutions engineering in the solutions engineering space. And then we extend it to post-sales as well, which is giving oversight on the customer success.
So do you need a deep technical background or a deep mathematical background before you could enter into this role? Because to titas, and even my mom who's listening here, when they hear engineering, it might be electrical engineering or civil engineering. They might be thinking about that.
I think it's preferred for you to be comfortable with technology. I wouldn't say you should be strong in a specific area, right? For example, in data, you can be strong in data engineering, machine learning engineering, or data science, or a mix of both. And that will be your foundation for being a solutions engineer. Because throughout your experience, you will learn different areas that's not your main strength. I think the key to being a solutions engineer is being curious because you will learn every day. Like no day is the same for what we call like an SE. Every day, it's sometimes you will learn a specific that domain that you wouldn't expect or even know. Like for example, in healthcare, I think that's one of the most interesting area. Like I am an electronics engineer, so I don't know how protein interacts, but you will learn from the client. So it's really cool. Or you will learn, uh, how to catch fraud, for example. So I think if I sum it up, yes, it's advantage to have deep technical knowledge, but at the same time, I think curiosity trumps more than the actual technical knowledge.
Nice, nice. Emil, solutions engineering sounds like the best role for somebody who has multiple or cross-functional curiosities.
Yes, I think you need to be curious about your client. You need to be curious about learning new technology, and you need to be curious how they behave as well.
How accessible do you think this role is for somebody who doesn't come from a tech background and to somebody who is coming from a very technical background but may not have the soft skills for it?
I can answer directly from someone who's technical background because I came from that bucket, right? I came from Teradata, started with as a professional services. I actually started in post sales. I think the key thing there is during my post sales or professional services here through to consulting, what I learned is you just don't do the work and deliver the work, but also learn how to tell the story of what that work or delivery means for your client. Let's say, for example, uh, manipulating tables. What does it mean? It means that you're actually helping, say, a marketing team build a dashboard so they can generate more click-throughs via email or via SMS. So that's something that you will learn and something that you should embrace, being able to help communicate and tell a story. For someone who has less technical background but has very good soft skills, it's actually an advantage too. Knowledge is much more accessible now. All right, unlike before, wherein you have to go through specific courses or universities. Now you have different resources available online, and you just capitalize on that. And the way I see it is, you build your portfolio. Yeah, you put yourself out there, provide an opinion, and I think that will also help gain credibility for you to be seen as as an SE or a thought leader.
Nice, nice, nice. Thanks, Emil. That's really, I think that's really, really insightful and motivating because there are some people who are great in technical skills and love that. But there are
Yeah.
some people who have multiple curiosities. Like they want that business portion, they want to create a POC, and they want to help tell the story. This sounds like the perfect next step to their career.
Yes, I would say so. Definitely agree. I think it's really being curious, learning how to frame a problem, and then influencing your customer that you have the best solution to solve their problem.
Told you guys, this guy is really very eager to learn, curious to learn. No wonder he's in solutions engineering. But I wanted to give a little bit of background as well, Much, because we have a lot of viewers in the US as well who, in case you wanted to go into that role, just to give you a little bit of background and stats. This is according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics here in the US. Sales and solutions engineering roles, they are projected to grow 5% here in the US from 2024 to 2034. So if you look at it, 5%, right? But this is actually higher than the national average for all jobs in the US, which is 3%, right?
Wow.
So it's not bad, right? 5%. If you look at the other data, 70% of enterprise deals right now requires pre-sales engineering support. So 70%. This is according to Go Consensus 2025 survey. What's the driver for this? Driver is solutions are becoming complex and complex with AI coming in, right? It's becoming really complex that sales process will require heavy solutions engineering support, right? And if you look at the salary for those who's interested in the US, this is just in the US, I'll give you a little bit of background. This is according to Indeed. If I'm not mistaken, it's average salary for solution engineer here is 132,000 annually, 132K. We always compare it to software developer. Software developer here is 130K. So it's not, it's a little higher, but it's not that far from software engineering. But the big thing here is solution engineer sits in sales, and a lot of times they get commission, right? The sales commissions that's on top of your pay. So that's I guess just to give people background, on this role. Because I know a lot of us are more into the implementation side, right? And we don't really see the sales or pre-sale side. So this is a really good role or good paying job if you want to pursue it. Segue to that one is Emil. If someone is watching and they want to pursue solution engineering, how can they prepare themselves? Like top three things that you would advise them to do.
Yeah, good question. I'll share you my experience. I know that one day I want to go back to solutions engineering, and here's what I did to get there. One is improve my communication skills. My communication skill is how you tell a story and how you tell a story to different audience, because you have different techniques on how you will tell it to, let's say, a senior, executive or senior leaders versus an architect. Because being an SE, you need to talk across those spectrum of audiences and being able to influence them along the way. I think that's one. Second is staying up to date with the technology. For example, for me and the team, we are pitching in graph technology. But graph technology or any other technology doesn't sit alone in any organization, right? You have to integrate it with your CRM, for example, or integrate it with their, business process management software. So being able to stay up to date on some of the adjacent technologies that will then influence on how you will piece the solution together. So I think that's the second point. And then the third point is learning how to dissect a problem is something that's also very important, because typically in my mind, how a good solutions engineer means not just knowing how to solve the problem, but solving the right problem. Right? There are instances where the customer comes to us and say, "We want to solve this." Of course, if we want to generate activity, we would love to do a POC. But I think a good solutions engineer will always think first, is this the right problem that we're solving? And second is, if that's the right problem that you're solving, how do you measure success? And once you measure success, and you always need to have an end in mind of what you wanted to achieve even before you start.
Never a dull moment solving problems with customers. I
Yeah.
think this role might be for you, right? So that's a good background. Thanks Emil for sharing that one. Not an easy role, to be honest.
I think so. Because that's true. I think I've seen people uh have challenging times because they do constant context switching. Like within a day, you will switch from one client to another, from one industry to another. It's actually exciting, but it can be, overwhelming for some. I think if you really want to constantly learn and, you know, and understand different areas, I think it's a great area to be.
What's funny is that I was in pre-sales roles for a while, for a long time in my early career. And what's funny is that when clients go to you, they will go to you with problem A, but really their problem is problem G, where G is very, very far from their original problem. So part of the fun is actually kind of going into that Pandora's box and searching for the truth of the problem. Because I don't know about you, Emil, but I've never talked to a person who knew exactly what their problem was. It's usually a symptom, and then after a while you will see that, okay, here's the mass in that, or here is the cancerous substance in that symptom, but all they see is the symptom, but they're not seeing like the deeper truth behind that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we've encountered that. We have fair share of experience of that as well, where the client come to us, can you solve this problem using AI? Oh, okay, great. It sounds interesting. And then when you ask them that, oh, where are you sourcing your data? What's the quality of the data that you have? And, you start unraveling those things and they start realizing, oh, actually our problem is, this particular use case. Like we need to
Yeah.
solve first how we model our data, how we, solve those data quality or, data modeling questions.
Yeah. Oh, what I'm noticing with the students that I'm teaching now, and I teach a lot of business leaders, their ambition is here. Their ambition is here, but their data preparedness is here. So
Yes.
their data preparedness, their systems and process preparedness is here. So it's an interesting thing. It's kind of like being a detective and a mystery problem solver at the same time.
And customer, these are all on the customer side, right? We talk about customer, but on top of that, there's also some internal pressure sometimes as a solution engineer, pressure from the sales team and the product team, right? Sometimes that the cases where, okay, so our product is not there yet, but the sales, we need this one. We need to close this deal, And so those are the things that you have to, I guess, navigate as well. That's why I think collaboration, problem solving is very important for this role.
Yes, I think that's a very good point, and that's also one aspect that I enjoyed meeting. Different personalities with different salespeople. No salespeople are the same, and I learned to to be able to deal with them and get to know about them, and based on what I learned about them, their preferences and whatnot, you use that to be able to collaborate with them and gain their trust, right? Because it's in pre-sales we call it like partnership between sales and pre-sales. That's the only way you can get a deal or a solution across the line.
But you know what I hate, Emil? It's when a solutions engineer or a pre-sales person is in the middle of two politics, internal and external, which is actually pretty hilarious to me when I don't know if this happens to you, but when clients kind of don't want to divulge everything, but as a solutions engineer, you're not the salesperson. You're there to help the client solve the problem, right? You sit between the sales team and the product team to help the client get to success. But sometimes clients have internal politics of what they want to divulge and what they don't want to divulge, um, which is which kind of adds murk or cloudiness to how a solution engineer, because a solutions engineer needs facts, right? Needs facts, needs truth in order to help you get to the other side, to to the solution of the problem. But what's funny to me is that it also requires high social intelligence, because you would need to be able to decipher all of those internal and external forces happening in both the client side and the internal company side.
In agree, yes, 100%. I think a lot of that is learning the social dynamics within the client. Sometimes within the client, there's already politics inside. Internal as well, we have our own objectives that we need to meet. So it's like a balancing act. From a client side, I typically do is do some active listening, which means listening to what they say, but also listening more to what they don't say. And sometimes it's more telling on what they don't say, of where, how urgent it really is, for this particular problem to be solved. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I'm actually gonna end this segment with two key messages that I'm getting from here. To the folks who's building their careers now and are interested in solutions engineering, especially for the really technical folks who want to step up into leadership roles, into solution bridging roles, build your business acumen, build on your weaknesses. If your weakness are comm skills, storytelling skills, leadership skills, communication skills, and soft skills, try to build it. It's part of the process of learning. It's part of the process of developing as a professional. Build your business acumen, because the reality of tech is that tech is a business, right? And there's going to be sales and marketing roles there. And that's the best thing that you could do, especially if you feel you're stuck in a technical role. The second one is to the clients who are listening out there. I would suggest that you should befriend and empower your solutions engineer. Because when you befriend your solutions engineer, you're actually getting the best insight from the world's best geniuses. Now, we're gonna get to the exciting part. Should people still be getting a master's degree? We're seeing all of these news that college is gonna be it's not gonna be relevant, or masters is no longer important because of artificial intelligence. But I've been investing in my continuing education even more so now than before. You have invested in your continuing education too, and you hold a master's degree in data science from Australia. Australia. Sorry to the Australians with my accent here. I'm just trying to be funny. But you hold a master's degree in data science from Australia. What drove you to pursue it? Do you have regrets? Do you still think continuing education is a worthwhile investment? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think I'll answer it one by one. So to give you I think to answer your question whether it's worth to do continuing education, yes. Uh, I think there shouldn't be a no answer on that, because the world is evolving and you should continuously learn, especially now with AI coming in, right? And so that's one aspect of that. The second aspect is masters, whether to take masters or not. I think it really depends on where you are at. For me, to give you a background, the way why I took my master's degree is two things. One, it's part of the dream. Like as a Filipino who studied in Philippines, I always wanted to study overseas, right? Gain experience in a new environment and learn from new environment. So I took that opportunity. Second is I I consider myself in terms of learning a structured learner, and masters give it a structure of the different aspect of what we should be learning. Uh, and third is also you're gonna meet great people and in your degree. I think that's also as valuable as what you're actually learning. And some of them may grow into like bigger roles, right? And that network will stay for forever after your postgraduate degree. I don't have any regret taking that master's. I think back to a question of, especially with, in Now that AI is really emerging, will masters still be relevant? I think masters or any degree will evolve of how it will be conducted. But I think one thing stays the same is you need to always learn new skills.
In the Philippines, there's this debate called diploma or discarte, which is in English it translates to strategy or a college degree, right? I would always say if you are a strategic person and if you have that, you should always go for a diploma. You should always have that structured learning, not just for the knowledge, but for the network and the good people that you would surround yourself with. I think one thing that I learned in entering continuing education, decades after I already started work, it's the quality of the people that you meet in the university. So what's actually attractive in entering a university is not just the knowledge. The knowledge you can get through ChatGPT, the knowledge you can get from books through various sources. You could Google it, right? You can take online courses. But what an online course doesn't really do is to have that face-to-face interaction, that face-to-face conversation with people. You could meet co-founders in continuing education. You could meet partners. You could meet friends. You can meet, lifelong friends in that situation. So I would say like go for masters. Go for, well, not necessarily masters. Go and continue your education and look for institutions and establishment and communities that would have a good group of people to surround yourself with. Is kind of my perspective on that.
I think for me, I have a kind of mix. I think it really depends, right? If you have financial, right, opportunity, if you have time opportunity, because master's financial and time, right? If your goal is to just get a higher raise, because in the US, we know, right, or everywhere, that if you have a master's degree, you get higher raise compared to, people who doesn't have master's degree. But if that's the only goal for you, I don't think it's worth it, to be honest, because eventually it's going to you'll see it in the performance rather than the degree. Where I'm coming from really is based on my experience here in the US. In the US, there's a lot of people as master's degree. We've hired people as master's degree, doesn't have master's degree. And I don't really see it like a directly proportional trend that if you have a master's, you can perform well in the job. That's where I'm seeing it. So maybe I'm biased because I don't have master's degree as well. But I tried to do continuing education through certifications, right? But it's just based on performance. I don't think master's degree is like really good um, uh, indicator to kind of predict that this guy is going to perform well. So I guess it depends on what's your why in taking your master's degree, right? I like the why on meeting people, networking, and that's one value. We talked to Carol, right? Carol took masters in the UK. She took ethics, and she's really after meeting people because it's ethics, it's human side of it. I like that. I like that why. But if it's really just purely of having a higher salary, I'm not into it because for me, based on my experience, there's no direct link between how you will perform and based on what's your degree. But again, which for me, bachelor's degree though is kind of different. In the Philippines specifically, I feel like you really have to go through that for me, um, because you can learn a lot going to school, right? Building that social element, and really understand a lot of things that you can learn. But master's degree, it depends for me.
Especially now in the age of AI, people really should not look at it as a shortcut or as a cheat to like a better job. You should do it for the right reasons, especially like look internally if this is your purpose. Is this what you want? Is this the type of learning structure that you want? And always, even if you get your master's degree, like what Emil did really well is that he already had experience, then he got his master's degree, which is what my titos and titas have always advised me. Get experience, work in the real world, then supplement it with continuing education afterwards. You'll appreciate what you'll learn more than just straight out of college, take a master's and expect the highest pay. Because again, as you're saying, G, there's no correlation between having a master's degree and being the top performer at work. So it's definitely not a cheat code. And I really don't recommend people to just use it to get higher pay. Use it to learn, use it to meet people in a community, and use it for to serve your purpose in your career and your career strategy.
I agree. Because the way bachelor and masters are entirely different. Bachelor, you're gaining knowledge and whatnot. In masters, you're not just only gaining knowledge, but you're also gaining uh, your classmates' experience, right? Because there's a lot more. In my master's degree, there's a lot more presentations. You're gonna learn different techniques and how to present, for example, or how to solve different problems. And I think that's the valuable part, right? Learning how others think and then adopting what works well.
Yeah. I think this is where the debate came from, Mooch, right? I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this report, the PwC Job Barometer report. It's an annual report where they see where the jobs are going, different trends, and how AI is affecting jobs, right? They analyze billions, almost billions of jobs ads, right, on 6 continents. And Philippines is not here. I don't think Philippines is here. It's just US, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, UK, Canada, France, Germany. What they're saying is the percentage of job postings requiring degree fell from 66% to 59%, right? From 2019 to 2024 for jobs where AI will enhance your work. And then now for jobs that automates, meaning, if your job is really AI exposed, the requirements for degree on those jobs fell sharply from 53 to 44%. These are all raw data from companies, right? Hiring, posting jobs. They see that the degree requirements is slowly falling and falling, and they can anticipate this to fall more with AI because people can already learn a lot through AI, right? They don't really need degree. From an education standpoint too, um, AI is rapidly evolving. There's always new things coming in almost every day with AI, and the educational institution cannot catch up. Similar to legislation, right? Similar to legislation, they cannot catch up. If I hire someone who studies this part of AI, let's say, right, AI, LLMs, right? I already need someone who's building it now. But the education, the institutions, they're gonna teach this to what, 2 years or maybe 1 year down the road. So there's kind of a delay. That's why right now they say with AI, they want to hire someone who knows how to build rather than having those degrees. So I think this is really the cause of all this debate, especially in the US, a big debate right now, whether degree or skills. And it's the PwC Job Barometer report. So I actually can't wait for the next one, which is I think is going to be June this year. So yeah, just wanted to throw it out there.
Wow, like data-driven insights on that. I think for the folks who are considering continuing education or a master's degree, of course, not everybody can afford it, and that's a reality, right? Maybe I could share something that what I did, which is at the onset, I had wanted to take my master's degree because I wanted higher pay. But then it's a big investment. And definitely when I ask older people, my uncles, my mom and dad, my uncles and my titos and titas, they said that gain experience first, then work towards your master's degree or continue your education. And honestly, be patient, guys. Don't use it as a shortcut. And definitely think about it if it's something that you personally want, because it's a long commitment. It's a lot of readings. It's a lot of learning. And it's definitely a full-time commitment. So think about it. If you like it, if you want it, we definitely recommend it. But of course, if it's something that serves your greater purpose and your career strategy. Okay. Now we're gonna enter the next segment, which is what did we need to unlearn in order to learn? Like, what's the biggest difference between studying in the Philippines versus Australia? I certainly have found that when entering in continuing education in the US, there were like some things that were quite different from the practices in the Philippines compared to the US. Emil, I'm curious, did you notice any differences in that?
I think they emphasize on focusing on challenging the question before answering the question. It's like why am I answering this? Is it even the right question to ask? Having that kind of mindset. Whereas in Philippines, generally for us, what smart means being able to memorize mathematical formulas, periodic table, for example, when we were like younger. And then second is also how you communicate. As you know, like Australians are very social and whatnot. And that stems through the education system that they have as well here. Just to share with you, my nephew studies in Australia. Just finished kindergarten. It's now year one. He's very articulate and very direct compared to how I was when I was like year one in the Philippines. Right? He's gonna speak his mind. So I think that's the second part, and also the third part is there's less hierarchy in in Australia, whereas in the Philippines, like authority is the authority kind of situation.
Definitely, I noticed immediately, like on day one, that it's not about memorization of concepts. We're never asked to memorize. In fact, whenever we're asked to read something, it's never the surface level of a case study. um, it's always something deeper within the case study, and it will prompt you to empathize, to actively listen, and to kind of dive deep into the case study and try to figure out, if I was the person in this case study, what would I do? What are the factors involved? So I'd say it's like 5 levels of deeper thinking, as opposed to memorizing concepts or just being aware of what the concepts are. I'd say it's like more critical thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I think even the way they assessed here, less on the multiple choices or the what type of questions, more of how, like short or long form answers to justify what made you decide to do your approach this way rather than that way.
One thing I also notice is that they encourage difference in thought and opinion. It's as if that the professors are getting it's as if the professors are getting you to think differently in order to create something new of value. And it's as opposed to fitting a standard or being able to comply with a standard. What I've seen in the US, particularly in Harvard, is that they want you to think differently. They want you to create value in the economy, and they want you to create value in such a way that it hasn't done before. And they'll educate you with everything that's been done so that you could take that and figure out, okay, how can we take this to the next level? And that's really like a different, to me, like a very empowering set of lens and a really a different approach to learning. Which actually brings me to the question, if you could change one thing about how tech education is structured in the Philippines, how would you want to change it? Based on everything that you've learned, what you've experienced, how would you want to change how tech education is delivered in the Philippines?
Yeah, I'm also keen to get your insights on this. And my take is, I think one, focus on you know real world problem solving. I think the more it's like scenario based type of problem solving, the more students will trigger critical thinking of how to approach a specific problem. And two, especially for tech or engineering, it's focusing as well on communication. Like how would you communicate? How would you articulate yourself in front of an audience? And how would you tell a story of that? And then I think third is having a much more, say, diverse type of assessments, right? The assessment that goes not just on focusing on, let's say, understanding the different concept, or also like solving a specific mathematical equation, but also providing the reasons why your approach is like that, how you communicate it, and what are the alternatives apart from the solution that you thought about.
Now that you mentioned that, I realized that I don't know if this is present in Australia, but in the US, the university, the industry, and the government are all aligned and intrinsically linked, meaning that there are case studies that the government wants to solve. There are case studies that industry wants to solve. So that partnership between industry, like private companies, and the government is actually there. That's why the students can solve real world problems, look at real world case studies, and not just rest on theory.
Yes.
Did you observe that when you went to masters in Australia?
Yes, exactly the same. Like even some of the government or some of the, science and research agencies, they put, they place people bi-directionally to the university, and the university place the people to the government agency and even to private sector. So there's a strong collaboration to generate new knowledge. I think that's the goal. Create more intellectual property for, for the purpose of innovation. And also at the same time, apart from that, is they also focus as well on inviting industry experts. Like for example, we've been invited to do like guest lectures across different courses, so that the students can hear directly from professionals how everything is applied, how that particular course is applied. For example, big data and analytics or machine learning applied in real world. They just don't want to learn about the theories on, say, a predictive model, but how it actually works in real life. Because sometimes there's sort of uh not a gap, but a difference on theories and how it's applied in real world.
And I think that that is like a huge thing if the students actually understand the industry, understand the market, understand the economy after they exit college. Because the worst thing that you could have is that you have all of these students who know theoretical book knowledge, and when they get to the workforce, they don't understand the economy and the industry that they're entering into.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think in here in Australia, I think in after your first year, if I'm not mistaken, if you're taking your bachelor's, you can already take internship, do industry placements. There's also a huge support from the government to incentivize private sector to to drive that kind of behavior, or that kind of system. There's like a strong collaboration between private sector, the government, and the university. There are also instances wherein university students will participate and will actually do the work to solve a specific business, to solve a specific problem for an organization, and that will ultimately be their project that they can present after that internship.
Yeah, nice, nice. I actually see this in like top universities. I won't name drop the top universities, but if you guys are interested in knowing which ones I've seen, try to do something like this. Comment down below and I'll tell you. But I don't want to plug them here here in the podcast. But I do see some universities that are so intrinsically linked with the private sector. And honestly, it's the best thing. If there are university leaders that are listening here, work with your industries near your universities, work with companies, and really link that, have that linkage between the students and the medium large scale enterprises within your community.
How about in terms of the difference in work, Emil? What are the things that you think you have to unlearn in terms of working in Australia and working in the Philippines?
Uh, Thinking in hierarchies, thinking that your manager or your boss is only has the answer. Here in Australia, you have to be able to collaborate. You know, you are empowered to actually solve the problem and do it, autonomously or in collaboration with other people. Another thing as well is they really emphasize on communication, uh more, sometimes more, than knowing the details of how you've implemented a specific problem. Yeah, so that's where I learned on the communication side of things as well.
Oh, I remember you
Yes.
mentioned about storytelling, right? Being able to
Yeah.
really tell the story around it, that communication aspect, and I kind of agree to that one because when I moved here, right, from the Philippines, I used to work in the Philippines, and then I moved here, and I think one thing that have to learn is trying to avoid conflict, right? Saying yes when you mean no. Those like very Asian thing, I would say, right? It can work against you if you work in Australian or Western culture. So again, a really, really good tip that, try to be more vocal, being able to communicate more, right? For someone who, let's say, who's not in a position to move abroad yet, it's not in a position to immigrate somewhere outside the Philippines, or maybe someone who prefers to stay locally in the Philippines, but they work with a lot of global teams, they work in global multinational companies, right? What's your advice to them, on how they can develop a global mindset for them to be competitive globally?
Yes, I think when we talked about global mindset, the most important thing is adaptability, being able to adapt to different environment. Uh, Say, for example, even if you work in the Philippines, say with a large multinational company, you'll deal with different people across different countries. I think having that adaptability and understanding of their culture would mean a lot on the other, side of the fence, right? Being able to know that, for example, here in Australia, uh, from a client side, they typically work 9 to 5 and they really protect that time after five. This means, it's their own time or family time.
If we're gonna go next level, feel free to jump in as well, Moocher, and if you have any advice. How can they be more adaptable? How can they be more open to cultures, right? What habits do they have to build to be adaptable and prepare them to be globally competitive?
I actually just do observations, like for me, I observed my colleagues how they are. I asked about them, learn about the culture.
Oh my gosh. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and I don't want to be hated in this community. So I see two sets of people, two groups of people. One set still carries a lot of learned helplessness, especially when they come from developing nations or developing economy. Learned helplessness is like, I'm a victim. I have no choice but to do this. This is my only option. And that really comes from a scarcity mindset. The unfortunate thing about learned helplessness is that if we cling on to it too much, it gets stuck in us, and we we get stuck and we don't get to the next level of growth. So one thing that I needed to unlearn even for myself is that what I do in the future is up to me now. So whether I downward spiral or upward spiral, then I have the power to do that, and that is all within my control. Is it a struggle? Yes, of course it's a struggle. It's investing in a lot of things that, it's working after work hours. It's working during the weekend. It's investing in learning new skill. It's investing in continuing education. It's a very, very, very painful process. But am I optimistic of the future? Yes, I am. Am I going to endeavor? Is nothing gonna stop me from getting there? I'm gonna the way that I just set my mind to it is that I'm gonna proceed, I'm going to pursue, and I'm gonna persist. Of course, with ethical boundaries and moral consciousness and stuff like that, right?
The way I think about it, it's like, you're playing poker. Like some people will get royal flush up front. Some people will get a decent set of cards. It's really how you play the game. And poker is about how you play the game, how you work with the best things, with the best cards that you have to maximize out of it and use every turn to start, changing the trajectory of where you want to be.
Yep, I totally agree. But I'd add there that unlike poker, that there's only one winner. I think in this world, everybody can be winners because everybody's gonna have their different set of cards, and we all need those cards. It's just that you need to know how to play yours.
I wanted to add as well, one thing that they can look at is, I guess, travel. If they have an opportunity to travel to other countries, even for vacation, I think it open up your mind, right, to different culture, different perspective, and you'll see that, oh wow, they're doing something totally different than how we do it in the Philippines, and that kind of builds toward being able to be comfortable working with global teams. And you also mentioned about being part of a global events in your company, or maybe watching podcasts like Lumpia Bytes, where we spotlight different Filipinos, right, who has the experience to work abroad and be able to share their insights, like Emil.
I actually like watching or listening to podcasts in my downtime to understand how other people get there. Like for example, there's like, you know, not just in tech, but also in sports. I particularly like, for example, the high performance podcast where they talk about different, sports, famous sportsmen, how they think, how they thrive, and using that as more of a inspiration. Someone gets there and manage to get to the top, then there's also a possibility that one of us can.
You never know, it might be you going that path. And this is why, personally for me, I really love doing this, not just spotlighting Filipino tech professionals, but sharing those journeys. I think we have different situations in life, different phases in life. I remember Simon mentioned that one, right, in our previous episode. But I feel like you can always pick up something from this person. Even though you're totally different role than me, I can always pick up something that I'll be able to apply to what I'm doing right now that will make me a better person, or that will make me successful based on my definition of success.
A lot of good stuff in this episode. We hope you guys learned something new today. Don't forget to subscribe because part 2 is where it's gonna get really, really interesting. We're gonna deep dive on AI and what it's doing to tech careers. Thank you, Emil, for sharing your career story. We're so excited. We got a lot of really great insights there, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.